friends, welcome back to the shop. Today we are going over what we've been up to on the inside of this in here 686. We got there's a lot that's been done to this, and what we're going to focus on today is that we're actually going to do a trigger stop, an internal trigger stop to this little guy, and it's pretty much something that you can do in your own shop. We're going to use a lathe. Don't need a lathe to do it, but we're gonna get to the meat of it right here. Let's get down on the bench and show you what I've been up to. We got the 686 down on the bench. We've been doing a lot of work. Been doing a lot of work in the background on this sort of Project 686. Picked this up off the rack because there was some interesting. It was a nice gun. Had been not a high mile 686, not a high mile L frame. Got a square back here. I think this is a -4, -5, whatever. It doesn't matter. But what we've got here is we've got forged internal components. But I noticed some problems on the initial inspection here, and I'm like, okay, this is something that's really cool. We could bring to the channel, check out, and probably everybody get a lot out of. So let's zoom in down here, and what we can see is, and I'm going way in on this, but what we can see right off the hop is that what I've installed, I've already started installing some shims. So here's some shimming. You can kind of see it. I'm just picking at the back of it here, but it's this. It's these couple of discs. So we've got a shim up here. You can just barely see this needle. I know it's not very good contrast. We'll use the we'll switch back to the Q-tip here. But what we can see is that we've got these discs that are sitting here, and what these are tooth out each. We've got a really interesting situation going on here. So, and I'll tell you how many we have down here, but because it's quite a few. And let it be known that we did remove that this is not under full tension. So I've taken quite a bit of tension off of here. We're very light. This is just has enough tension on it to sort of hold this whole thing together while we inspect it. We'll take this, that hammer safety out of there. So if we pull this hammer back, what we can see is where I want to direct your attention is right over here to the side of this hammer face. I'm going to try and turn this. There it is, right there. You see that? You see this big shiny? All of that shininess on the side. This hammer has been running into the frame of this 686 as it's being fired. Like I said, it doesn't have a whole lot. Cosmetically, there's nothing that we can really do. I mean, we could recolor case this. We're not going to do that. We can do that. We could do it in-house. If we really wanted to fix this cosmetically, I would just send the parts away to have them recolor case. For me, specifically, I would send them away to have them recolor case. We could do it in-house, but it's not going to come out. It's not going to look quite this good. Send it to a special guy who's going to redo the color casing. But so as this thing fires, right, we're pulling the trigger here, and as this thing fires, it has been running into making contact with the side of the frame. It's really bad. So what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to eliminate that. Now, when I first picked this gun up, there was a lot of shake here, and we can check for that. If you're looking at a revolver in a shop, how you can check for that is you can pull the trigger back halfway, a little bit, and then just shake it back and forth while the side plate is on the gun. And if you got some shake here, you're going to need some of these shims. Now, these aren't terribly expensive. You can get them through Manpower Custom, and this is obviously going to make your life a lot better. But this particular 686 has got not one, not two, not three, but four. I didn't even have that one in my fingers, but four of those hammer side plate shims. That's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's 8 thou of take up that we're taking on this side. Now, you don't have to put them just on one side, right? I'm putting them on this side because obviously the hammer is falling way too short over here. After we get into it, maybe we get some rounds through this thing, we find out, okay, hey, look, there's something else going on here, or now we're actually too far over this way and now the gun's off center. We'll find out as we get to it, but what we needed 8 thou of shims in order to stop this hammer, in order to make it so tight that the hammer wouldn't fall anymore. So then we originally had 5 in there, then we dropped a shim out. So the other one is an even better story. So now we've got some shimming here on the trigger, and this is kind of rare. I don't see this that often. If I can get these off of here without ruining them. I don't see this that often, but this trigger has got, was really a real mess. Let me see if I can use another tool to pull these out. But when I first picked this up, I'm like, okay, definitely spidey senses are tingling here, because this thing just doesn't, I'm like, this trigger just feels, it feels like it's just wobbling around in there. And at first I thought that maybe there was a problem with this stud, like this internal boss or internal pin. I'm like, I don't know what is going on here. But this thing has got a lot of shimming on the inside. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 pieces of shim stock, 2 thou each. So we got 10 thou of 10 thou shim stock in here to center this, in order to center this trigger up. Now, again, like I said before, what we're going to have to do is put these in there. We're going to fire it a little bit. We're going to run it some, and then we're going to come back and assess. But this is what I thought was really interesting. I really wanted to show you guys this, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, Smiths, they're perfect when they leave the factory. You shouldn't mess around with them anymore. Look, I'm telling you, this thing was made on a Friday afternoon at 4:30. And it's just some of them aren't just, you know, it just didn't work out. So some of them really do need quite a bit of attention even after the fact. Now, this guy's got a reduced weight mainspring in it, and then what we have, and actually we did a full polish, full mechanical polish on this rebound block as well, because we really wanted to, we were really trying to smooth this thing out and make it the best shooter that it possibly can be. But what we're taking a look at in this particular video, what we want to be looking at is this. So we have this rod. Now, inside of the rebound block is this rod, right? This rod is custom cut. We can see grind marks on the top of it, but this rod has been custom cut to bump up against that pin. So when it bumps up against this pin, it stops the trigger. Now, if we want to have an absolutely fantastic single action trigger, we could drill a hole in here. We need a carbide bit, but we can't. These things are stupid hard. I got another video. Maybe I'll drop it at the end of this one. You can check that out. There's another video of me adding a trigger stop, a rubber end trigger stop to one of these for a double action only setup. That gun came out really good. It's featured heavily on the channel. But what we can do is we can make this pin, and then we can cut this to the exact length that we need in order to make it stop on this rebound stud. We can make it stop right there, so that when this trigger is pulled, that all it's going to do is move just enough to let the hammer fall, and it's going to stop right there. So what we are going to use on this channel in order to get this effect is that we're going to use a lathe. We're going to head over to the lathe right now, and I'm going to show you what we're talking about. You don't necessarily need a lathe. All you need is a chunk. I like to use brass for this application, but you need a chunk of brass that's this diameter. I'll tell you what that diameter is once we get over there. Let's head over to the lathe. All right, so here we are over on the lathe. Uncle Hank Fire, you've been cutting up a lot of nylon. Yes, I have. Okay, so this is our original pin. Let me bring it down here so we can see. Okay, cool. So this is our original pin, and what is our diameter here? Looks like it's it's 99 thou. So we can call this 100. This is 100 thou. Right, this is our original pin. So what we have set up in the chuck here is just a chunk of, this is just a piece of brass rod that I've got, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck this in the lathe, get it nice and tight, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little brass pin that's 100 thou, that is 100 thou wide out of this little chunk. Now, like I said before, this is not, you don't have to You don't have to do this on a lathe. This is just a little hobby lathe. You don't need a lathe in order to do this. All you need is a chunk. All you need is a chunk of brass. That's 100 thou. So we're just kind of, we're giving you some of the building blocks here, and just kind of letting you swing for the fences. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this a little bit oversized, because when and just like that. Now we got that. Let's get this over to the bench. So here we are back down on the bench, and what we've got is we've got our old pin and we have our new pin, the one that we made. This one is still rough cut. This just came right off the lathe. This thing is, we still have to determine, we can't just go pop this in the gun, because right now I doubt even the trigger would move at the length, would barely move at the length this is. So this, and what I can tell you is that this overall measurement here, the length of this pin is going to come down to is within a couple of thou. It is very tight, and once we start getting in here, because of the ratio, the axis ratio of what's going on, this has a huge effect on where the terminal distance, the terminal depth is for the trigger. So the only way that we're going to be able to figure out exactly how long that pin needs to be, how long this trigger, our new trigger stop needs to be, is just by grinding this thing down. And how we're going to do that, what I am going to use, let's get this 686 carcass out of the way here. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this old jeweler's block. So what we have here is we've got a jeweler's block. We've actually got the side plate screws from this 686 are inside of this jeweler's block. And all we're going to do is we're going to pop this thing in there. We're going to use the needle file, and we're going to go over this thing, and we are going to take a bunch of passes at this, and we are going to keep making passes here, and we're going to keep reassembling this until we've got our terminal distance sorted out to where we know that what we're going to get is appropriate, a perfectly timed up trigger stop. So that's all I was saying. This is a simpler, mechanically, is a simpler way to do this process. However, it's not any less time consuming. This takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of tuning. We want to make sure that we get this little chunk of brass to do exactly what it needs to do. I know there's a bunch of people probably out there, what are you using brass for? Why is brass such a big deal? The whole thing is that I really like the way that brass slips over top of, I really like the way that brass slips on top of, on steel. It feels really good on a piece of on a steel spring. I'm trying to get our focus just right there so you guys can see what's going on, but it feels really good on top of that kind of spring. So what we can see is that when we bring this all the way down in, is that we're blown out entirely, and that's completely useless. So what we can see is that, and obviously we performed this operation a couple of times, so we're going to be taking passes at this, and we're going to be making this perfect. Let's pop this thing back in. Now, a note is that I do not have full spring tension on this. Okay, all we have done is just taken up the slack on this mainspring. Okay, we don't want to put full tension on this when we go to test it like this. Right, we just want to take a little bit, just take up the slack on that thing. So now we're just going to put this rebound block back in. Right, let's take a look. That's in, nice. So even at that length, right, that is not very long. That is, even at that length, what we can see is that this hammer is either not down all the way, or it's not hitting that. At any rate, so this thing is still got we still got to take a pile of measurement off of here. I've been taking, this is probably my fifth, you're going to have to do this a few times. There's a reassembly and a disassembly here. You're going to have to keep pulling it back, putting it back together, pulling it back, putting it back together again. So what we've been doing is we've been using this jeweler's block. We've had it sitting down here inside of this jeweler's block, and we've been using that thing to take this thing apart. So now what we have is we've got it so, and I've got to pull, it's still just a little tight, right? I've got to pull back on that to get that trigger to do its thing. And we've actually kind of increased the weight on the pull here. That's okay, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna work this in. We're gonna work this in a bit, and a few trigger pulls later, what we end up with is something super smooth. And I mean, just in that period of time, we take out that little bit, there's like another half thou or so of lash on the inside of this, and now it's completely removed. It's totally ready to go. This thing feels like $1 million. Now, this single action feels like $1 million, because as soon as you pull that trigger, the trigger drops the hammer and nothing else moves. So that is a cool way to do a trigger stop on a 686. Any Smith & Wesson platform really is going to be pretty accepting of a format like that. It's a cool way to keep it all hidden. It's a cool way to just kind of overall improve the action on this. I was gonna show some specs back and forth on the original pin versus the size of our new pin. I don't necessarily think that that's a great idea, because like I said, it requires hand fitting. This is something that you gotta do. You're gonna have to do it a few times. This revolver's had a lot of work done to it. There was a full trigger polish that I ended up doing on here. We ended up cheering up the cylinder, the run out. We made it with test and check the yoke. Made sure that our yoke and crane were in alignment with the rest of the frame. It's a really cool gun. It's going to be a great shooter. This is going to turn into being just an awesome all-arounder. Maybe put might mount a red dot on here. I'm not really too sure exactly how we're going to go about it yet. But anyway, can't have enough love for the Smith & Wesson revolver platforms, guys. This has been an absolute pleasure. If you like the video, like the video. A lot of 2A content out there. Needs every single like. It needs every single subscriber, and it absolutely needs every single Patreon member. Any money that we get off of Patreon goes directly back in the channel. It has been a pleasure. If you like the video, I'll catch you in the next one.